If your home was built before 1980, there's a good chance it contains asbestos, but that doesn't mean you need to panic. Most people don't realize that asbestos in their home or anywhere else isn't necessarily dangerous. It only becomes a problem once it's disturbed. If at any point the mineral's microscopic fibers become airborne, that's when you can breathe them in, and then decades later, you could develop mesothelioma. Today, I want to tell you exactly where asbestos might be hiding in your home and what you need to know about whether it poses any risks, because even small doses of exposure to friable asbestos fibers can cause disease. Hi, I'm Terry Oppenheimer, and I've been writing about mesothelioma and asbestos for the website mesothelioma.net for over a decade. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that understanding where asbestos hides in homes is critical to protecting yourself and your family. Let's start with the most important fact about asbestos in homes. Asbestos that's in good condition and not disturbed is generally not a health risk. Asbestos' dangers come when materials that contain the carcinogenic mineral are damaged, deteriorating, or disturbed during renovation or repair work. That's when fibers become airborne and can be inhaled. So, where is asbestos hiding in older homes? Let's start at the top and work our way down. Roofing materials and roof shingles, particularly on homes built before 1980, often contained asbestos. Asbestos cement shingles were incredibly popular because they were durable, fire-resistant, and long-lasting. If your home has old gray or brownish cement-style shingles that have been there for decades, there's a good chance they contain asbestos. Again, they don't pose a risk until they break, crack, or need to be removed during re-roofing. Attic and wall insulation is another major source. Homes built between the 1930s and the 1970s often used vermiculite insulation, which frequently contained asbestos. If you have loose fill insulation in your attic that looks like small gray or slivery pebbles, it could be vermiculite. The most dangerous type of vermiculite came from a notorious mine in Libby, Montana. It was sold under the brand name Zonalite. If you have this in your home, do not disturb it. It poses a real threat. If you need to work in an attic that has vermiculite in it, call certified abatement professionals and they can safely take care of the situation for you. Now, I have a lot to talk about. Before I go any further, I want to take a second and ask you a favor. If you're finding the information in this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. It really helps us more people find our videos. And if you have questions or topics you want me to address, send me a note in the comment section below. Also, be sure to watch until the end for important information about resources available to you. Let's keep going. Another source of asbestos in older homes is those popcorn or textured ceilings that were so popular in the 70s and 80s. A lot of them contained asbestos. In fact, that's one of the most common asbestos sources in existing homes today, and it can be dangerous, even without being disturbed. It's because of its position overhead, where gravity causes particles to fall as the ceilings age. Unfortunately, homeowners often try to remove or repair these ceilings themselves as do-it-yourself projects when they're looking to update the look of a room. They don't realize it's dangerous. Never scrape, sand, or otherwise disturb a popcorn ceiling without having it tested first. Vinyl floor tiles, as well as the adhesive that's underneath them that keeps them stuck to the ground, it frequently contained asbestos in homes built before 1980. The tiles themselves, they're not dangerous if they're in good condition and you leave them alone. The danger comes when people try to remove these old tiles. Doing that releases asbestos fibers from both the tiles themselves and the glue. And sanding or scraping that adhesive is especially dangerous. The same is true of textured paints and patching compounds that were used before 1980. If you're sanding walls to prepare them for painting or making repairs to drywall, and the home was built before 1980, there's a very good chance you're sanding asbestos-containing material. It's especially risky because sanding creates lots of fine dust particles. Another similar danger comes from drywall and joint compound. While drywall itself typically didn't contain asbestos, the joint compound, which is the material used to seal the seams between the sheets of drywall, they often did. When you sand walls during renovation, you're potentially releasing those fibers. Your heating system, your ductwork. In older homes, they're another potential source of danger because they often have asbestos insulation wrapped around the ducts. Hot water pipes, steam pipes, they have that wrap too. It often looks like white or gray paper or cloth wrapping. If that material is deteriorating or damaged or disturbed during repairs, it's going to release fibers into the air around it. Basement pipes are an especially common place where you'll find these materials. Cement siding and siding shingles on the exterior of homes, particularly if they have a cement-like appearance, they often contain asbestos. Breaking or sawing or removing these materials, it releases the fibers, and that's why professional contractors are the only ones who should handle siding removal on older homes. Now, let's talk about the critical question of whether there are really risks of asbestos exposure in small doses from around your home. Here's what you need to understand. There is no safe level of asbestos exposure. Even a relatively brief exposure can cause mesothelioma decades later. The relationship between exposure and disease isn't like, say, alcohol, where a little might be okay, but a lot is harmful. With asbestos, any exposure does carry risk. That being said, the risk increases with the intensity and duration of exposure. So someone who worked with asbestos insulation every day for 20 years, they obviously have a much higher risk of being diagnosed with mesothelioma than someone who was briefly exposed during a one-time home renovation. But we have seen mesothelioma cases in people whose only known exposure was a brief home renovation project where asbestos materials were disturbed. Making matters more challenging is the fact that asbestos-related diseases have extremely long latency periods. That means that the illness can be brewing in your body for years, and symptoms don't appear for decades. You won't know whether an exposure caused you harm for between 20 and 50 years, sometimes even longer. If you disturbed asbestos in your home during a renovation in the year 2000, you might not develop symptoms until 2030 or later. In most cases, people don't even realize they've been exposed, or if they do know, they often don't take it seriously because they feel fine immediately afterward. Then, that long delay between the exposure time and the symptoms appearing, it makes it difficult to remember that the exposure took place in the first place, and especially hard to connect cause and effect. So, what should you do if you think your home might contain asbestos? First, if your materials are in good condition and not disturbed, leave them alone. Intact asbestos doesn't pose an immediate health risk, so don't disturb them by trying to inspect or test them. Second, if you're planning a renovation or repair or remodeling work on a home built before 1980, assume that asbestos is present until it's proven otherwise. Before you start any work that involves sanding or scraping, cutting, or demolishing materials, have those materials tested by a certified asbestos inspector. Testing, it's relatively inexpensive and it could save your life. Third, never attempt to remove or remediate asbestos materials yourself. This is absolutely not a DIY project. Certified asbestos abatement contractors have specialized equipment, training, and procedures to remove asbestos safely. They use proper containment methods, protective equipment, and special disposal methods that prevent fiber release. Fourth, if you discover damaged or deteriorating asbestos materials like crumbling insulation on pipes or a damaged section of popcorn ceiling, Don't touch it. Don't try to clean it up. Call a certified asbestos professional to assess the situation and have them make recommendations. And fifth, be especially careful with activities that create dust or disturb materials. Drilling, sawing, sanding, scraping, breaking, or demolishing any building materials in a pre-1980 home can potentially release asbestos fibers. Even something as simple as hanging a picture and drilling into a wall could be risky if the wall contains asbestos. Now, if you're about to rent or buy a property, know that you have the right to request an asbestos inspection. If you're purchasing an older home, consider making the sale contingent on asbestos testing and remediation if necessary. The cost of proper asbestos removal can be significant, so you want to know what you're dealing with before you go to closing. Asbestos, it could be in your home, hiding in roofing, insulation, popcorn ceilings, floor tiles, pipe insulation, textured paints, joint compound, and siding. If your home was built before 1980, you need to assume that asbestos is present until proven otherwise. And remember, there's no safe level of asbestos exposure. Small doses carry risk. Before any repair work is done on an older home, have your materials tested and never attempt asbestos removal yourself. And if you discover damaged materials, call certified professionals immediately. You can visit mesothelioma.net for more information about asbestos in your home and safety precautions. You can also call 1-800-692-8608 or use the live chat feature to work directly with a patient advocate. As for me, remember to post your questions below. I'll see you next time.